Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for Keys to Successful Campus Planning, FCAs and Accurate Asset Data, brought to you by the IFMA Academic Facilities Council. Please be aware that this webinar is being recorded and you are muted to prevent any background noise. If you have any questions during the webinar, please type them into the questions box. If time permits, there'll be a Q&A at the end of the presentation. David Trask is the National Director at ARC Facilities and is the host of the Facility Voices podcast. He advocates for leveraging technology to enhance efficiency in organizations like K-12 schools, universities, hospitals, and more. A prominent speaker at major conferences and events, David is also involved in the IFMA World Workplace Education Program Committee and serves on the advisory board for Facilithon. He highlights the importance of comprehensive succession planning to address the impact of facility team retirements, and we're happy to have David speaking here today. David, take it over.
Thank you so much and welcome everyone. What we're going to talk about today are some of the current challenges that I've heard around the country, and I'm sure you're going to be able to relate to a lot of these. But one of the things that we're going to start out with is talking about the impact of FCAs on master planning. Also, what are FCAs? The Facilities Condition Assessment, what's all involved? Also, where asset inventories play a role in that. And also institutional knowledge, the retirement issue, attrition of losing key folks on my teams. Also, the current labor shortage, especially skilled trades. We're going to talk about the old way versus a new way with regards to technologies. And then we're going to talk about keeping up with your ever-changing building. So let's go ahead and jump in. So let's talk about FCAs and how the role of FCAs in master planning. So again, FCAs are a snapshot in time. They really give you a core of what's going on in your building. What are those current conditions? What are some of the deficiencies that you might have? What are old systems that are using? What are old wiring in your buildings? What are some of the infrastructure issues that are going on in your building? But it also helps you to really prioritize and plan for replacements, plan for decommissioning, but also that long-term maintenance strategy. But again, it helps you formulate that in-house roadmap and develop that with your team, and also look at those long-term goals of what you're trying to achieve within your organization. But FCAs, they really, where the impact comes into master planning is it helps you make those data-driven decisions. You're not blind, okay? You're not going into it blind trying to figure it out. You're also able to identify specific needs in your facility, but also establishing those priorities, as I mentioned earlier. But equally important is that financial aspect, that budgeting aspect, and that planning for that fiscally, but also the long-term strategy and vision of your organization. How does this impact your long-term goals within your organization? So FCAs, it includes an asset inventory, utility mapping, frequency of FCA updates. How often are you doing an FCA too? So again, remember, an FCA is a snapshot in time. So how often are you revisiting the results of your FCA and making those modifications as you go? It also helps you really to get an idea of what your structural conditions are. And again, the longer term master plan. But really, it covers a lot of different things. You've got building systems, so your entire system for your HVAC, all of your electrical system, plumbing, all of the building specific systems that keep your buildings functioning. Also the structurals I mentioned, walls, roofs, load bearing elements, all of that information, building envelope, exterior, windows, doors, all of that. You can see there's a big list here, but all of these are make up that FCA and what we traditionally will see in FCA checklists. The challenge is always, what's the consequence of having inaccurate FCAs? So again, When you're looking at doing an FCA, you really need to take a hard look at what's included in that FCA. Now, also, are you going to outsource and have a third party come in and do that FCA? So what's their start point? Think about it that way. So what information are you giving them? Are you giving them accurate information? Do you have accurate information? Or are you just pointing to a plan room and saying, here's all the renovations we've ever done in our building, go in there and good luck? Or do you have them walking with your team? Well, if they're walking with the person who's been there for a month versus the person who's been there for 15, 20, 30 years, who's going to give them the more accurate information? But what this does too is the consequences of not having accurate information or getting accurate information from an FCA means your misallocation of resources, funds, unrealistic budgeting, right? I just talked to a guy the other day and he said we actually had an FCA. They gave me an end of life date in 2023, and the machine died. It was an HVAC unit, but in the FCA, it didn't include replacement. It included current replacement cost, but not ripping a hole in the side of the wall to get the unit out, not the crane rental. Also, the fact that they couldn't get the unit for a year, $10,000 a month to get this unit, just the temporary unit that's sitting on a trailer, $10,000 a month. So again, is it a realistic snapshot in time? Does it include all those ancillary additional things? Well, what if the unit doesn't make it to that date that's in that FCA? Also, if you don't have that critical information, those details and all of that information that helps you make those critical decisions, well, how do you address failures when they happen? Not everything breaks on a schedule. That's not the way it works. And most people are running stuff until it dies. They're not running it, and they even if they plan for a replacement as part of a project, there's no guarantee it's even going to make it to that project. It could die anytime leading up to that project timeline. But it also, the consequences here also, by not having accurate information, it really compromises your long-term budgeting, long-term planning within your buildings. It's a challenge. But again, some of those misallocations, again, with those resources, it's unrealistic budgets, failure to address those critical issues. But here's part of the problem. It starts with this. How accurate is your information? Again, it could be garbage in, garbage out. So if your assets are all over the place, which they will be, and your database is a mess, which I guarantee you it's not 100% accurate. I never have seen that. And I'll show you some of what I typically have seen and what I've had shared out from some different clients of mine, where it's a realistic view versus what everybody wants, the utopia view. Okay, but at the end of the day is ask yourself this, look yourself in the mirror and think, how accurate is my database? Because if you're providing an inaccurate database, it's garbage in, garbage out. So you have to be able to set up an FCA for success. The way you do that is starting to address this. So 20 to 40% of assets in the field have either been replaced, decommissioned, moved, or new. But most of the time, those are not all documented, meaning your database can be way off. 20, 40% is what I hear all the time. And then usually I call it the palms up effect. It's the how accurate is your database? They hold their hands up in the air, palms up. I have no idea, because they're not on top of it. Why aren't they on top of it? They don't have time, or there's not an SOP internal that says if you do this, you have to update it, or they just get behind. But again, it comes down to time. But 80 to 90% of information in the database is still missing stuff. You may have the vast majority of your equipment in there, but ask yourself, is it missing the serial number, model number? Is it missing location? Where is it? 80 to 90% of your database has a hole in it, all right? And that hole usually looks like this. Think about it, missing fields. It's not named right in the system. It's not even put in what floor is it on. Is it on the roof? Is it in a mezzanine level? Is it in the basement, on the first floor, second floor? Is it in room 102? Is it in the ceiling grid above room 102? Where is it? What is it? So again, remember, garbage in, garbage out. So if you give this to your third-party vendor, this is their start point. And remember, 20 to 40% of the stuff that's in here could be wrong. It could be inaccurate. So think about it. It's not just the stuff that's in here is wrong. There's stuff in the field that's not even in your list. Think about all your jockey pumps. Think about all of the stuff that you have in the field. You go into a mechanical room, and I see this all the time. I go into a mechanical room, and I'm given an asset database from a client. And they'll, according to their database, they've got 4 units in a mechanical room. I walk in the room, but as soon as I step foot in the door, I look around. I'm looking up, I'm looking all over the place. And I count 20 units. Now, they're not all the big units, don't get me wrong, but there's jockey pumps, there's expansion tanks, there might be some kind of a filter system off to the side. There's anything that's in that room that needs to be captured, because that is part of your equipment database. So a lot of that stuff's not even in the list. So how can you plan, and how can FCA capture the end of life date on those units when they don't even exist in your system? We call those ghost assets. They're in the field, they're out there, they're functioning today, but you don't even know they're there. So how do you plan for the failure of those? Those little things add up. They all add up. And it seems to be a snowball effect. When one part of a system goes down, it's like a snowball. It goes down the road. This is what you want, though. You want a field verified list that shows what's out in the field, and this should be updated live. Your team's on a roof, they're switching out a unit, they're working on an exhaust fan, they switch out that unit. Why aren't they updating that unit? And let me give you kind of a heads up of what works. What works is when that guy climbs up that ladder, pops the roof hatch, goes out there, fixes the unit, replaces the motor, does whatever he has to do, comes back down the ladder, closes the hatch, okay, goes back into your office. The next words out of your mouth should be, did you update it in the system? Did you update it in the system? Is the make, model, serial number in there? Did you convey that over to the admin or whoever normally would in your current systems would add that information? If the answer is no, make them go back up on the roof. They're going to do that twice. And they're going to, it's a process. So if your process doesn't make them do that function that I just mentioned, you will never be on top of your database. It's a moving target then. This is a process change. But again, what are they able to do in the field? So is it he's writing it down on a piece of paper and putting it in his shirt pocket, climbing down the ladder, or is he able to open up his phone and update it live right there? Take photos of it. If not, why not? It's 2024, folks. There's tools out there. You can do this today. You're ordering food on your phone. You're ordering a lift on your phone. You're getting directions on your phone, but yet you're not able to update your database in the field on their phone when they're on a roof. And I heard this yesterday from somebody I met with, and they said, you know, our iPads don't work on the roof. And I said, why not? They said, because we can't do it offline. So they have to climb back down to where they've got Wi-Fi in the building. Come on. It's 2024. You don't have access to your stuff on a roof? Well, your equipment's on the roof. You need to change that. You're in a basement. There's no cell service. You can't update stuff when you're in a basement? Come on. There are tools that you can do that. We'll talk a little bit more about that here in a second. But your buildings are constantly changing. So remember, it's a moving target. Your buildings, think about all the renovations that you've got going on in your buildings. Every renovation you do, for the most part, is going to mean something's going to move, something's going to change. Could be walls, could be equipment, could be emergency equipment, could be any number of different stuff. But changes to the building means something moved, and they happen year over year. Not in every building, but they do change. So how are you documenting those changes? And I show this picture off to the side because every single roll that you see in those shelves there and those cubbies there means a change to a building. All right. A lot of folks have something that looks like this. They've got a plan room, or they've got maybe a plan room, and they've got a share drive someplace, and they've got stuff all over the place. Some of these rolls may be tucked behind somebody's desk. Funny story, funny, not funny story. This photo, I took it, okay? And when I walked up to these shelves, I'm kind of looking, I'm like, what do these numbers mean? They had a little book off to the side. Well, that book had been damaged because it fell, because at one point, this room here, a sprinkler went off. All right, that I was peeling pages apart. Some of them I couldn't read at all, right? But that was kind of their index of what all of those numbered little tags were. The other problem was there were about 40 of those tags laying on the floor. That was their system. Well, the problem is, imagine if this room caught on fire, or imagine if that water ran for a day, overnight, nobody knew. You lose all of that. That's legacy knowledge for all the changes to your building. Think about that. But that's reality in a lot of places. The other challenge is, do you know where your equipment's located in the first place? So you've got a new guy who starts next week, right? This person's going to start. This person's got 20 years experience. They're starting on your team, but they don't know your buildings. So how long is that ramp up time for that person? Think about that. They start next week. Can they walk into your building? You hand them an iPad so that they can find all the equipment in every school that you've got, every building that you've got on every site. It's 2024. Okay, you can, but most people don't. They don't have the way to do that. We'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But the other challenge is you've got equipment all over the place. It's those hidden things. You got stuff up on a roof. You got it at a mezzanine level. You got it in a closet. You got to go through an electrical room. Then there's another another room off to the side of that. There's a door. All right. That's where I see data rooms all the time, or they'll have the split. So you'll have the one side of the splits there, and the other side's either outside or on the roof or mounted to the side of the wall. I've seen it all. All right. But equipment's all over the place. So that new person doesn't know where any of this stuff is. But the other challenge is, remember what I said earlier about ladders. Okay, they climb up that roof ladder, they pop that hatch, or they're on a ladder, they pop those ceiling grid, and they're looking around, they're trying to find all that stuff, or they're going up a ladder to get to another ladder to climb up on another level of a roof, whatever. All right, but they're going up and down the ladders. Why, when they get up on the roof, can't they access all the information for your building? Think about that. All your information, all your drawings, all your equipment, all the stuff, the historical stuff, right? It's all over the place. That's normal. But the other problem is most folks have some of this stuff too. These are pieces of equipment that are on their last legs. They're running it. You're running it until it dies, running it till it fails. That's not a successful strategy, but it is what it is. Everybody's got this. The challenge is you also don't know when this stuff's going to break. You know it's on its last legs, but it's running, right? So people run it until it dies. The challenge is, and I cannot stress this enough, go out and try to find equipment. Everybody's experienced this. Go out and try and get equipment. Today. It's not like it was 10 years ago where you order it and it's here in a week. I'm hearing year. I'm hearing 6 months on most equipment. And I was just talking to a guy the other day that said he's been waiting over a year to get a transformer. A year. I talked to another guy, and I mentioned it earlier. They had a chiller break in one of their big buildings in a school. A chiller, it's a university. A chiller broke. He had a chiller on a trailer next to this building for 14 months. $10,000 a month. Couldn't get one. It's now being delivered. But again, think about that. None of that was in the FCA, that 10 grand, that thing was going to fail. That's what they were basing some numbers off of. Again, it's a baseline snapshot in time, but it doesn't account for inflation. The units are 20, 30% more than they cost, 5 years ago. So think about when's the last time you did that FCA, and then what's the actual cost today? And then what are those ancillary costs to replace that now? But also, here's the other thing. Your team is running around like crazy, all right? That ladder that you can see there where the snow's on the roof, or the guy in the middle there, all right? You guys are up there on the ladder, you're climbing the roof when it snows, when it rains, whatever, something breaks, you go. You're also up on the lifts to get to this stuff, but they're always on the move. Well, why can't they access the stuff that they need on the move? Why can't they go from building 1 to building 40 and see all the information for every single building, right? I ask this at trade shows all the time when I'm speaking. I ask everybody in the room, raise your hand if you got a smartphone. Every person raises their hand, and I'll say, keep your hand in the air if you could access all your drawings, all your equipment locations, all your shutoffs on your phone. And virtually everybody in that room puts their hand down. And I say, pardon me, why not? Why the hell not? It's 2024. Come on. Everybody can access stuff, whatever the heck they need today. You just got tools. You just got to get the right tools. And the other challenge is, again, let's talk about the institutional knowledge. You got guys on your team that have been there 20, 30, even 40 years. The record I've heard so far is 50 years. 50 years a guy had been with I asked him if he was still in diapers when he started. But at the end of the day, he'd been there 50 years. That guy has probably forgot more than he could ever tell somebody. Think about that. Institutional knowledge. If you got a handful of people who know where everything is, what are you going to do when they retire? What are you going to do when they win the lottery and they don't come to work tomorrow? Or they get another job. They get another job. If you're in public sector and someone offers that person another $5, $10 more an hour, I've heard even more than that, for basically the same role to go into either private, or they'll get a recruiter that reaches out to them, even for public, that pays $5 more an hour. They leave. All that institutional knowledge just walks with them. So I want you to ask yourself this. Think about your team and think about the two people who you consider the critical people on your team. 2 people, maybe it's 3, whatever. Pick those people, and I want you to picture those people in your head. What do you do if they're not there tomorrow? They don't come back. What's the impact on your team? If they don't come back tomorrow, what's the impact on your team? That's a dramatic way of looking at it, but that can happen. I've heard horror stories about that happening. What are you going to do when they're not there? It's like switching a light switch on. The light switch is off, everything's good. You turn the light switch on, now it's a reality. They're not there. What impact does that mean to your organization? Well, again, what about the person who starts last week? Do they know where all your information is? No. A building's not a building. I talked to a guy the other day and he said, yeah, I heard this guy was a hospital actually. He said, I hired this guy, he came in here and because he's got healthcare experience, he's great. He's gonna step right in and know everything. I said, he doesn't know your hospital. And he sat back in his chair and he said, you're right. He knew the ways that they did it at another location, which are not your ways. So again, what about that new person? They start next week, they start last week. They don't know your building. So what's that ramp up time? Here's the problem that I kind of addressed earlier, just a few minutes ago, and it's this. Remember those handful of people we were talking about? I said, picture those people, the ones that you feel you can't afford to lose. They're Carl. It could be Bob, they could be Betty, doesn't matter. Imagine this. Carl knows everything in your building. He knows where every HVAC unit is. He knows which ceiling tile to pop to find the fan coil unit that serves that part of the building or that room. He knows where all that stuff is. He's been with you for 30 years, 20 years, whatever. He also knows where every isolation valve is in your building, right? I just talked to a facility just yesterday, and they were talking about a steam pipe broke, or I'm sorry, hot water pipe broke in one of their tunnels in their building, right below their building. And he said it happened at 2 o'clock in the morning. The only people who were there were security, right? So think about that. Security didn't know where any isolation valves were. It was in an area they had no cell reception, no idea where the isolations were. It's just running and running and running. Okay, they tried getting a hold of this guy. They couldn't get a hold of him. He was asleep. You know, he had his phone muted. They couldn't get a hold of him. So what they do? They shut the water off the main. No one had a clue until the next morning when Carl wakes up, sees his phone, and goes, "Oh my gosh." Right? Then he tries to get a hold of somebody and say, "Oh, don't worry about it. We shut off the main." Well, it started a snowball of other problems in the building. They didn't know. They couldn't get a hold of the guy. So again, relying on one or two people, that's a problem. He also knows where everything changed in the building. He's been there 30 years. He knows where every wall moved. He knew what that building used to be before. It's now labs. Now it used to be just classroom. Now it's labs. He knows what walls were moved. He knows what lines had to be moved. He's not there tomorrow. What do you do? So what are you going to do also when he walks into your office and it's coming? And you know he's going to be retiring. You don't know exactly when, or maybe even told you, I'm going to retire at the end of the year. I'm going to retire this summer. My wife and I are going to travel, right? I get one of two reactions when I ask that. What's your plan? It's either we know it's coming, we're doing the best we can, we're short staffed, we're down 30% head count, we're doing the best we can to have him, have somebody else shadow him for a while he's here. We just really haven't had that much time. So we're going to give him we're going to see if we can get him on a retainer to come back part-time for a little while. Or it's deer in the headlights. Carl doesn't give you a lot of notice. He gives you 3 months. You can't even run an ad and find somebody in 3 months. So by the time you do get Carl's replacement in, he's gone. He's gone. And then how long is he going to answer his phone after he's gone? You're going to be calling him all the time. You understand the problem here? Handful of people knowing is an issue. Why aren't you in control of where your information is and be able to share that with people? And so everybody's on the same page. Well, roughly 30% of facilities teams are in the retirement window of 5 years. Think about that. But more importantly, I want you to think about it this way. Remember I said, think about the 2 or 3 people on your team. How much of your building's institutional knowledge is in their heads? Think about that. When you're going to position buying software or buying a solution or whatever, think about it this way. How much institutional knowledge are you going to lose in the next 5 years that's in those 2 people, 3 people's heads? Some of them, I've heard it's 80% of my institutional knowledge is in 5 guys' heads. Think about that. 80%. Some of the folks I've talked to it's higher than that. What are you going to do when they leave? You're losing it all. Losing all of that institutional knowledge, all that history of your buildings is in someone's head, and it's going to walk out the door. Well, staff retirements means that loss of knowledge in your built space. In the space, all your buildings across your campuses, all of it. But those are the folks that if they're not there, things can go sideways quick, really quick. All right, look at that center picture at the bottom. That's a hospital. That happened in 45 minutes because no one could find the isolation valve. Hospital, 45 minutes. Think about that. That's not grabbing a mop and a bucket, all right? You're shut down for, and they were actually shut down for 3 months. 3 months. But it's the ancillary damage too. It's not just replacing drywall and flooring. All right. It's the ancillary damage of that stuff went down the floor, the 2 floors below that, and that actually was just rolling water onto 2 brand new CT machines. $1.5 million each. All right. It's not just the stuff that you can see. I always say this: water finds a way. Water is not our friend. Water finds a way in your building. Water finds a way to get in. Water also doesn't care about damaging anything. It will damage all your computers. It'll damage your infrastructure. It damages your stuff. It always does. And it always finds a way in. So getting that turned off as quickly as possible is the goal. But if your team doesn't even know where the isolation valves are in your buildings, floor to floor, what parts shut off or what valves shut off what parts of your building, why not? Why not? I walk down hallways all the time and I'm looking up, and clients ask me this all the time: what are you looking for? I'm looking up and I'm looking for the blue, the red, and the yellow dots on the ceiling grid. Or I'm looking for somebody who wrote Sharpie in a Sharpie, there's an arrow up there. And I ask them, what is that? I don't know. Well, who put that dot up there? Who wrote that up there? Well, that's not my writing. Well, what is it? Let's grab a ladder and pop it. Pop the ceiling tile, there's a fan coil unit up there, filter side. Or I'll pop that ceiling tile, well, there's a water line, there's an isolation valve there. Is that water? Is that gas? What is that up there? I don't know. What's it serve? I don't know. Do you even have that documented that's even there? Yeah, it's that blue dot on the ceiling. Come on. That's what we're talking about. It's teams, when something goes sideways, the longer it takes them to find something, the more damage it causes. Water finds a way. The other challenge is lack of information in the field can really, and especially with a lot of organizations are down headcount right now. They've lost so many people, but it's forced a lot of organizations to shove what is normally preventative maintenance over into deferred. They just shove it off to the side. They don't have time. Or they're outsourcing. So again, costs are going up because now I'm outsourcing, or I can't find people. Now I'm paying overtime. Again, it's a moving target for facilities, but the lack of that information, it slows everything down. Especially when you're short-staffed, everything slows down. But it can also mean stuff breaks more often. You're not servicing it, you're not maintaining it, you're running it until it dies. That's not a good strategy, because you also then can't plan for when it does break. So again, a lot of that preventative maintenance, those PMs that you guys are working on, think about how many of those are being shoved into deferred or that end of life. You're just running it until it dies. So with the labor shortage right now too, it's a mess. Skilled trades, I'm a huge advocate for pushing kids to join skilled trades. I'm a firm believer, 4-year degree is not for everybody. That's okay. But think about today. I heard a stat the other day that said for every 7 people who are leaving the market, there's only 2 coming in. That's not sustainable. So put it in your own perspective. When's the last time you ran an ad for a skilled trades position? How many applicants did you get? How many of them were real? I talked to a guy just yesterday, and this was one of the funniest statements and not funny statements I've heard in a long time. He said, yeah, I'm when you ran an ad for your electrician or your plumber, how long is it taking you to get somebody in? He goes, are you getting any good applicants? He goes, I can't even get bad applicants. They're getting nobody to reply. Or if they do, he said, I had an electrician position open up, but I had an accountant apply for it. That's what we're up against right now. Everybody's fighting for the same small, shrinking pool of people. It's tough. So how do we bridge that gap between old ways, old processes, and new? Let's take a look. Well, this is some of the old stuff. I talked about this a little bit earlier, where everybody's got some plans. I see this all the time, and it may not be everything, or maybe you scanned everything. But How many times are your team looking at the scans, or are they just, it's just easier for me, I'm going to go grab the rolls, right? You got some guys that just won't go look at a desktop computer, or they can't access it on their phone, so they're going to go back and look at these rolls no matter if you scan them or not. Or you've got this. I scanned everything in, we dumped it on a shared drive. I still got that plan room sitting over there, but look at these files. What building is this for? I have no idea. Well, what if they open up a folder on a shared drive and the folder's empty because Bob accidentally deleted it and we can't find it? It's gone. Matter of fact, we trashed all the drawings too. Funny, not funny story. Someone scanned a bunch of different drawings that they had. They were compiling all this stuff in. They had a bunch of students come in and help them scan drawings, right? Again, students know nothing about construction, don't know anything about these drawing sets. So what they did, their internal process as students, because they were given no direction, was when you get done scanning the rolls, we're going to put them in these round trash cans over here. And we're going to put a big sign on them that says, do not trash. All right. Now it's Friday afternoon. Everybody goes home. Third party outsourced custodial company comes in, doesn't read the sign, dumps them all in the dumpster. Monday morning, facilities director walks in, and one of the guys that was put in charge of this project with the students and the facilities guy comes in, looks in that room, all the trash cans are empty. That's the come to Jesus moment, he said. It was the, oh my gosh, where'd everything go? The custodial staff threw them in the dumpster. They were out there dumpster diving an hour before the trash company came to take them away. Think about that. All of it would have been gone. Let me compound that for you. When they were scanning them, they hooked up an external hard drive. Okay, they were scanning all the raw scans onto an external hard drive. The hard drive crashed and failed, unrecoverable. So now, not only did they fish all those plan sets out of that dumpster that rained all weekend, now they have to scan all that stuff. Again, attempt to. See the problem here? It's a problem. I can't find them here, can't find them here. But just scanning stuff in isn't the way to go. If you haven't organized all the stuff, it's not named what it is. It's not even attached to the right building. You don't even know what project it is. What happens is I'm digging. And again, remember, you're short-staffed. I don't have time. So I'm just digging. And what happens a lot is they just give up. They go out in the field and try and find it out themselves. They're tracing lines. They're looking, just doing their best to try and track stuff down. Well, how does that help you when you're on a construction project? It doesn't. Again, all hands are touching this information. You need to be able to find it when you need it. But also think about the equipment side where I mentioned earlier is your team's in the field. Start documenting where this stuff is today. What are you waiting for? Every day that you wait is one day closer to Bob, Carl, Betty, the person who's on your team, those handful of people, the 2 or 3 people who know where everything is, it's one day closer to their last day. Think about that. One day closer to their last day. So it is imperative that you start capturing that information today. Don't wait. The other challenge is, imagine if you were able to pull your phone out of your pocket, grab a tablet, grab your laptop out in the field off your cart, and you can find all the information for whatever the heck you need. That's what you can do today. You can do all of this today. And let's take a look at what that could look like. So imagine you need drawings. So like I showed earlier, you've got all those different plan sets and plan rooms. You've got stuff on a shared drive. You're just trying to track stuff down. You're trying to find information to do your job, all right? Imagine you just grab your tablet, grab your phone, and you tap on an app just like any other app, all right? You go to the building you want to get information on, and I want to see drawing sets. So this is for a floor. All the drawing sets, not piles of, figure out what drawings went where. I can zoom in, find just the drawings that touch that floor, that part of the building. Not digging through a shared drive, not going back to a plan room. You're doing this while you're standing on the first floor or second floor, whatever. You can see all the drawing sets that touch that room, that part of the building. You can do that today. Now let's talk about even equipment, all right? So all your equipment in a building, right? So inside, outside. So if I need to find a piece of equipment, or I walk up to a unit and I scan a QR code on the side of that unit, and I can open up and see everything for that unit: make, model, serial number, parts list, O&M manual. I can have links out to YouTube videos. I can have links back to anything that I need that's relative to that particular unit, a filter, if it's, or a belt size, or all the specs on that. I could even have my vendors have access to all of that information. Today, you can do that, right? Also, all your shutoffs. So not just the stuff inside, but the stuff outside the building too. So clicking on a building, clicking on a button that says shutoffs, not rocket science, all right? For this building, all the isolation valves, all your backflows, all the information outside between the building. You can put your sewer cleanouts in here. All that hose bibs, every electrical panel, including all your panel schedules, a panel name, all of it searchable. So everybody on the team sees it day one. That new hire has access day one. The day they start, they know where every piece of equipment is. They know every change to every renovation that's ever happened in your building. They know where every shutoff is in your building. Day one. Can they do that today? Why not? So again, what are you waiting for? You can do this today. So there's steps that you can take, and that is, you've got to take that first step. You've got to take the leap. It's not hard. It's very easy to take that next step within your organization. And then this is going to benefit you, not just short term or near term. This is going to benefit you long term. So again, all of this information, we're talking about FCAs. All of what I just showed you, imagine handing that to that org that's going to come in and do that FCA for you. Okay, think about if you've got all the information you can provide them when they walk in the door in advance of them coming on site. You can give them all this information through that FCA. Now you have an accurate snapshot in time. And as things change in your building in between when you do an FCA and the next FCA or the update, your team is constantly updating this live. So the next time you have an FCA, you're planning on that, you're current. So you have that accurate information throughout the life of your buildings. So let's jump in and answer some questions. And I want to make sure this is my contact information and our contact information. If you have any specific information you want or have any additional questions, shoot me an email. Give me a call. I'm happy to answer anything I can and point you in some great directions. So.
Great. Thank you, David. Everybody, I hope you got some good information. We'll now open up the floor to questions. We do have a couple of questions that I will ask. If you have any additional questions, please add them to the question box and we will hopefully get to them. So David, let's start out with the first question, which is how customizable is the asset database? Can you include a column data field or, for example, refrigerant type, filter size, and other key child assets?
Yes, you certainly can. And in what I showed you, you can actually add any detailed notes. You can even have video to the specific thing. I always say use video or photos too, because I believe a picture's worth 1,000 words. But also those folks that are on your team that know those little secret squirrel ways to do something, because they just figured out an easy way to fix something, or it constantly breaks, they can document that and anybody on the team will be able to see that. But the goal here is it's you capturing the information or the information for that unit is always the way it stands today. So if there's additional information and fields that need to be entered in here, there's always places to put all of that.
Great, thank you.
Certainly.
Next question. We are struggling to keep people with prevailing wage rates and we're losing decades of field knowledge. How do you recommend we approach something like this when we've already lost so much info?
Yeah, well, you got to start today. I mean, you have to start. You remember I said earlier, every day you wait's a day closer to them leaving. Unfortunately, a lot of folks have lost people. They've lost a lot of their institutional knowledge. It's just gone. Document it as fast as you can. Feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to guide you in some of that methods. I've talked to literally thousands of people about this, and I can provide some best practices, but you have to start today. Because again, it's not even just your team that's left already, it's the team that is still there. They know where a lot of this stuff is too, so it's important that you capture as much of it as you can. But with losing people and trying to manage that against the prevailing wage and trying to keep up with current wages, it's a struggle. I mean, every organization is struggling with that right now. I've heard some creative ways that people are retaining people, and that's through some like bonus structures and things like that. Especially with unions and things like that. I've heard that there's been some shared resources, some additional training, some different job classifications. There's a lot of outside the box ways I'm happy to share offline.
Great. Next question. We had an FCA done last year and it's missing a lot. How have you seen other schools handle that problem?
Read the fine print in the company that you're doing FCA with. I don't mention names. I don't disparage any company at all. I think the challenge is always starts with this. It's read the fine print. One of the organizations that had an FCA done that I talked to not too long ago, it was end of last year. The FCA company doesn't get on a ladder. They don't get on a ladder. So my experience is always, where's a lot of your equipment? It's on a roof. Okay, they're not walkout roofs, they're ladders. All right, so how do you get accurate FCA data? You're looking at drawings. Well, that's fine, but are you looking at specs too? Well, what if it's the wrong drawing set? Again, remember that garbage in, garbage out. Did you give them the retrofit drawing sets that you got from 1995, or did you give them the set from 1967? Right? Again, what information did they start with? If they're not getting on a roof, that's a problem, right? Because stuff swaps out on roofs all the time. If they're not getting on a ladder, then how are they popping a ceiling tile to identify where the runs are, where your fan coils are, what's really up there? Again, read that fine print. But again, a FCA, and I cannot stress this enough, is a snapshot in time. But an FCA also is giving you the end of life dates, the age of the units, all of that. But it's also a guess. It's an educated guess, but it doesn't oftentimes take into consideration the ancillary additional things that it's going to require to replace that. Again, it's a snapshot in time. Is that snapshot in time from 5 years ago? Go try to get an HVAC unit from the prices that it was 5 years ago. Good luck with that, right? It's 20, 30, 40% more, and you can't get it for a year. On top of that, remember I said earlier, you got to rip a wall open to get it out of there, and then the new unit's got to get in there. You got to have a crane. You got to think about, are those ancillary additional numbers included in that pricing? Probably not. So when you're getting an FCA, make sure you look at that information. Make sure that you identify any potential holes in that, and then you have to be able to account for some of that. Otherwise, you're blind.
Great, thank you. And we have another one.
Yeah.
It says, I'm down 30% headcount and I'm having to outsource some HVAC PM tasks. Can vendors also get access to those systems, and what kind of security is there to limit their capabilities?
Yeah, well, I can only speak for our system, but yeah, we actually create vendor groups, and they have read, download only access. They can drill down to even an individual building, individual school. and give them access for, and where that comes into play oftentimes is projects. So you've got an active construction project, you're doing a renovation on a school. One of my clients is a school district right now, and they're renovating a couple of high schools. So the vendor actually has access to all the drawing sets, all that legacy information, all the plan sets, all the equipment locations, equipment database, all the shut-off locations, all of that information. They have access to it for 18 months. So it's actually going to be about 20 months. But again, after that, it's gone. And then those new construction project or those new as-built closeouts that they get at the end of that project are automatically added in.
All right, thanks for that one. If there aren't any other questions, I think we'll move on. I just, at the beginning of the call, I neglected to introduce myself. I'm the new education chair for the IFMA Academic Facilities Council. My name is Scott Stukel, and we're looking to have, as we go forward with these webinars, to be able to produce this information, get it onto our website, and some expanded social media capabilities as well. So for the Academic Facility Council members, and we hope to have more like this. On behalf of the Academic Facilities Council of IFMA, David, I want to thank you very much for that. If anybody has any, there were some specific questions that we will pass on to David, and if it's warranted, we'll have him reach out on one-on-one basis. From that, the presentation, I believe that we are going to try to get that posted up as well. So it should be posted hopefully by early or mid next week. So we'll let you know if you don't find it on the academic facilities page. Contact one of us and we can follow up with you. So again, David, thank you, and everybody else. We hope that you'll attend our sessions. We're having at least a quarterly, and I think David and his team is going to be involved in some of those as well. But we're also looking to add some other more functional, more operational type webinars in between as well to be able to provide education and meet our mission of being able to expand knowledge within the Academic Facilities Council. So thank you all, and have a wonderful day and have a wonderful weekend.